we're going to look at the energy of movement. First, we're going to look at gravitational potential energy. Now, how would you describe a high diver? Is it someone who is brave, insane, full of beans, or full of gravitational potential energy, or GPE? Gravitational potential energy is the amount of energy an object has because of its position above the ground, i.e., its height above the ground. The gravitational potential energy, or the GPE of an object, depends on its mass and its height above the Earth's surface. When a bungee jumper starts to fall, he starts to lose gravitational potential energy. As the elastic cord pulls the bungee jumper back up again, he gains gravitational potential energy. So the higher he is, the more gravitational potential energy he has. The gravitational potential energy of an object can be calculated using this equation. GPE is equal to mass times gravitational field strength times by the height. The mass must be measured in kilograms. The gravitational field strength is in newtons per kilogram, and that's usually taken as 10 newtons per kilogram. And the height is measured in meters. So the gravitational potential energy is measured in joules. And we use this triangle to help us solve the formula. An example. An osprey with a mass of 2 kilograms flies at a height of 200 meters above the ground. How much gravitational potential energy does the osprey have? Well, we know the equation is GPE is equal to mass times by gravitational field strength times by height. So it's going to be 2 times by 10 times by 200 is equal to 4,000 joules. An apple with a mass of 200 grams falls 3 meters from its branch to the ground. How much gravitational potential energy will that apple have lost when it reaches the ground? And we use this formula again. The gravitational potential energy lost is equal to the mass times gravitational field strength, which is 10, times by the change in height. 0.2 times by 10 times by 3 gives us 6 joules. Now we can answer some of these equations now. Let's start. A 5 kilogram rock is lifted 4 meters above the ground. What is its GPE? Well, you know the mass, you know 10, and you know h, so you need to find GPE, or EP, for potential energy, as it's written here. M times by G times by H. Is it 2 joules? No. Is it 20 joules? No. Is it 2,000 joules? No. It's 200 joules. 5 times by 10 times by 4 is 200 joules. Next, a football is kicked 10 meters into the air where it has a gravitational potential energy of 40 joules. What is the mass of the ball? Well, this time we need to find the mass. So we look at this equation, we look at the formula triangle at the bottom, we need to find the mass, so it's gravitational potential energy divided by G and divided by H. What is the answer? 0.25 kilograms? No. 4 kilograms? No. 40 kilograms? No. 0.4 kilograms is equal to GPE 40 divided by 10 times by 10 is 0.4. Next, a fireman with a mass of 75 kilograms climbs a ladder until he has reached the gravitational potential energy of 11.25 kilojoules. Kilo means 1,000 joules. How high has he climbed? This time you want to find H. So we do the gravitational potential energy divided by mass and divided by 10. So it's going to be 11.25 thousand divided by 75 times by 10. Is it 0.015 meters? No. 6.67 meters? No. 150 meters? No. 15 meters. Notice we have to rearrange, so it's 11,250 divided by 10 times 75. Next. A crane lifts a 125 kilogram load from 7 meters to 13 meters. What is the change in gravitational potential energy of the load? So it's simply GPE is equal to M times by G times by H. 125 times by 10 times by H. Now H is the change in the height from 7 to 13, which is 6. Nope. Yes. 125, that's the mass, times by 10, times by 6, which is the difference in height. Well done. Thank you. That's potential energy. Now we're going to look at kinetic energy. Which one has the most kinetic energy? Rita, who's sleeping, or the cat? I think the cat, because it's moving so quickly. Now the word kinetic comes from the Greek word kinesis, meaning motion. Kinetic energy is the energy an object has because it's moving. All moving things have kinetic energy, but the amount of energy they have is not just dependent on how fast they are moving. What other factors affect the kinetic energy of a moving object? Well, the more massive it is, the more kinetic energy it has. We can calculate the kinetic energy using the following equation. Kinetic energy is equal to half times by mass times by velocity squared. Don't forget, you have to square the velocity. Mass is in kilograms, velocity is in meters per second, which we have to square, and the kinetic energy is measured in joules. Let's look at an example. A car with a mass of 1,500 kilograms travels at a velocity of 10 meters per second. So we use the equation half mv squared. Half times mass times by velocity squared, which is half times 1,500 times 20 squared gives 300,000 joules. Sometimes it is necessary to rearrange the kinetic energy equation in order to calculate the mass or the velocity of a moving object. K is equal to half mv squared. What are the arranged versions of this equation for calculating mass and velocity? We can use this formula triangle to help us. The mass is equal to the kinetic energy divided by half. When you divide anything by half, it's the same as multiplying by 2. So we have 2 lots of kinetic energy divided by v squared. Don't forget the v squared. Alternatively, you can find out what v squared is. V squared is equal to ek divided by half m. In other words, 2ek divided by m. However, this is v squared. You have to remember, if you want to find v, you find this answer and you have to square root it. So the v is the square root of 2ke divided by m. Don't forget the square root button. An example, a lorry has a mass of 20,000 kilograms. If its kinetic energy is 2.25 megajoules, which is million joules, at what velocity is it travelling? We know that kinetic energy is equal to half times mass times velocity squared. Remember, the velocity squared is equal to 2e divided by m. So in other words, v is equal to the square root of 2e divided by m. So the velocity is equal to the square root of 2e divided by the mass. And it gives a value of 15 meters per second. Let's do some problems here. A 70 kilogram skydiver travels with a velocity of 50 meters a second. How much kinetic energy does he have? Well, the kinetic energy is equal to half mv squared. Is it this? No. Is it this? No. Is it this? No. 87.5 kilograms, half mv squared. A shark swims with a velocity of 10 meters per second and has 50 kilojoules of kinetic energy. What is the mass? We need to rearrange this formula triangle to get the mass, which is 2 lots of kinetic energy divided by t squared, divided by v squared. Its mass is probably not going to be 1 kilogram or 4 kilogram or 10,000 kilogram. It's 1,000 kilograms. 2 KE divided by v squared gives 1,000 kilograms. Next. Now this is the hardest kind of question. How fast is it moving? An 8-gram bullet is fired from a gun where it gains 490 joules of kinetic energy. How fast is it moving? Well, we need to find v squared is equal to 2 KE divided by m. Don't forget the mass must be in kilograms, not grams. So it's going to be, the mass is 0.008 kilograms. And I think the speed will be 350. Notice that the velocity is the square root of 2 times the KE, 2 times 490, divided by 0.008 kilograms gives 350 meters a second. Well done. Thank you very much.